Let's welcome to the stage Roux. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
I'm stoked. I'm happy to be part of this kind of soft launch, like secret cool underground mini tour you've been doing of Los Angeles, of all
Thank
these
you.
cool venues. I guess I'll start by, because you don't live in Los Angeles, you're just spending a little time. What made you
No, I
kind of
don't.
want to make LA the home base to sort of start this new era of your career, introduce this new music to people?
Um, well, I've always loved LA, and also I think the main reason is because the musical references on the new record are 100% American, which is kind of not that different to my last two records in a way because I've referenced a lot of disco. But I feel like this record in particular, it always comes out of my machine as LaRue, but the references were very much kind of late 90s, early noughties R&B. There's some hip hop references in there, but they're kind of it's sort of shrouded in LaRue, if you know what I mean. But there was a very much an Americana feel about it and a feel of the music that was coming out when I was kind of probably about 13, 14 and a little bit younger. Like I used to actually, sort of forgot how much I liked songs like Mariah Carey and stuff when I was younger. And I kind of felt like with every record I make, there's always something I'm trying to do that I've not done before or that I feel like is a new challenge. And that felt like a really nice new challenge for me. You know, I was like, I've always loved tracks like Wanna Get to Know You by G Unit. And I feel like people people probably don't know that about me. And I was like, there's a whole kind of musical reference sphere and stuff that I listen to that I've never even bothered trying to do in my own records. And I was like, I think it's kind of time, you know. I felt relaxed enough as a person to do it. And I felt like starting it in LA made a lot of sense because of that, you know.
What else besides Mariah Carey and G Unit were you listening to during this time?
I love like tracks like there's a track by Tevin Campbell, like Can We Talk? It's like yeah. It's stuff like that, you know. I kind of just there's it'll be like the odd track here and there sprinkled around like Heartbreaker by Mariah Carey. There's like just specific really classic R&B moments that I feel like have never got old. They've never got old. Like we have a DJ called Spinnerita who's playing before all of these shows for like an hour and a half, and I've asked her to play all of those kind of moments from that time, and it never doesn't go down, you know. Like I'm in the dressing room like loving it. I'm not allowed to swear. I'm in the dressing room
Who says you're not allowed?
I was told earlier not to swear.
Who told you that? I'm okay with it, but you know.
But yeah,
People have sworn on this stage before, so
Okay, good,
don't feel
okay.
bad if it slips out.
I'm a really bad swearer. It's like every other word in my personal life. So yeah, I've been loving that, and it kind of gets me vibed up. And I feel like if you DJ, I DJ a little bit, and you know, if you ever have a house party or anything, it never doesn't go down that music. I feel like it might age in some people's eyes, but it doesn't age vibe wise. And I feel like it just for me it never gets old. And I miss it. Like there's a kind of like there's a groove and a sexiness and a smoothness that I miss in pop music. It doesn't feel like it's there anymore. There's a couple of artists, you know, like I was talking about Q Marsden earlier. I feel like there's a couple of people that have elements of it, but I just kind of wanted to bring back that happy summer R&B vibe, but with a couple of moments of hip hop reference as well, because it's just what I like, you know.
Have you been playing much of the new material at these shows you've been doing in Los Angeles?
We play 3 songs. So I'm going to play one tonight, which is probably the most, it's called Baby Line. It's probably the most kind of chilled sort of R&B one on the record. But everything has a kind of, there's a couple of tracks on the record. There's one called Final Fantasy that is very much, very, very much like a kind of early Pharrell kind of reference. And also, I'm going to draw a blank now. There's a producer, oh God, why can I not remember his name now? That's really bad. There's a producer that worked with Aaliyah and stuff, and I can't remember his name.
Timbaland?
No, Timbaland is one of the references, yeah, but there's another, no, Rodney Jerkins. Yeah, Rodney Jerkins. It's that kind of sound, and
Worked on the last Spice Girls record when they
that's
Forever.
right. That's right. Like that kind of combination of Rodney Jerkins, Pharrell, and Timberland. I miss all of that. And I was just like, I kind of want, without being arrogant, I was like, I kind of want to try and do my own version of that, like the LaRue version of that. And that's kind of what I've done on this record.
Well, I feel like that's sort of back in the zeitgeist. Everyone's kind of like into that Y2K era again. People wearing like the Juicy Couture velour.
I'm not doing that.
But, I mean, like that era is actually, I feel, I guess it's cyclical, but I feel like, yeah, it's kind of it's in the air, that sort of
Wait
thing.
till you see the album cover.
When is the album coming out?
I'm not entirely sure right now. I've sort of been doing this because it's nice in an old school way to check out stuff that you've made live, which people don't kind of do as much anymore. I did it on Trouble in Paradise. We came to Coachella and I did like Tropical Chancer and a couple of other tracks before the record was out. And it was really helpful to see how the tracks worked and what people responded to as well. So we've been playing 3 tracks from the new record. But also just kind of reintroducing myself to the live environment. I've been away accidentally for like a good 10 years. I think Trouble in Paradise came out in 2014. And then I had Supervision come out in 2020, about 5 weeks before the pandemic hit.
I said Superstition before. I'm sorry.
Don't worry.
That was just
if
me.
I wrote that record, I'd be super happy. So that's okay.
That was just like a slip of my brain.
Don't worry, it's not a big deal. But I think it's been tough being away from the live environment for so long. I think once I knew I couldn't tour Supervision because of the pandemic, I sort of just thought, you know what, fuck it, I'm not going to wait till the pandemic's over to go and promote this record. It just seems, as an artist and as a producer, as a composer, I was like, I'm going to be bored musically by the time I can promote this record. I'd rather just make another record. So that's what I did. So it's kind of been like making 2 records, but without promoting one of them. So it's been a long time. So I just wanted to get back out.
It's interesting that you said accidentally, because I think maybe people would wrongly think, I mean, there are artists that non-accidentally like to take a lot of time between records, and there was, I guess, 5 years between the first
I
two.
do take time as well. Yeah, it's not like I don't take time. To be fair, I've like Trouble in Paradise took forever. It was a difficult second record. It took, I think it was like 2 years of touring my first record and then 3 years of making that record. So it was a 5-year gap. I think people forget that as well, that if you tour a record for 2 years, you're not really making another record during that time. You are just touring the record you were touring. Then you go away and make another one. If that takes 2 years, which it usually does, people say it took you 4 or 5 years to make a record. And I'm like, it didn't. I was just touring the other one, So I think that's always a difficult one.
And then, obviously the title, I don't know if the title Trouble in Paradise was sort of like a cheeky reference to the fact that you said that was a difficult record and, a lot of changes were happening. You were a duo at the beginning. LaRue was a duo at the beginning.
That's right, yeah.
But, yeah, I know it's a cliche, but of course the first album was so big, I imagine, because you don't like to do the same thing twice, that there were a lot of powers that be. Now you're on your own label, so this isn't quite the issue it was, but yeah, I'm sure everyone wanted a Bulletproof too.
Yeah, I mean, I did. My bank account did, but it doesn't work like that. If I could walk into the studio every day and write Bulletproof, I'd be like printing money. It doesn't work like that. Bulletproof was written. It was a real moment in my life. It was like. I wrote the dun 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 dun, the arpeggiated part. I wrote that and played that, and then the rest of the song just kind of flipped off the back of that. And it was just a moment in the studio. The rest of the record was finished, and we'd handed it in to Polydor. And then we were like, we should do a couple more days writing just to see if anything happens, and it happened. But it's not something, I think, to go and intentionally try and write a hit is a disaster. I don't think it often works unless you're, I don't know, Dr. Luke or one of those Swedish producers that does it for a living. I think like maybe they can do that, or Max Martin or whatever his name is that his name? They maybe can do that. I'm just not that person. I'm not that producer. I'm not that artist. I write whatever feels right in the moment. And sometimes it might turn into something and sometimes it doesn't. I was brutally lucky with Bulletproof. It also, threw me into a sphere I wasn't quite ready or knew that I could be in. I didn't understand how it was happening. In for the Kill had a hit in its own way, but it didn't go stratospheric like Bulletproof, and I wasn't expecting that to happen. I wasn't expecting to be successful in America at all. So when they said things are kicking off out here, I was like, what? You know, it was a really, really strange moment. You know, it's very rare for a UK act to break in America, especially at that time and up until that point. So yeah, you can't intentionally do it, but yeah, there was a lot of obviously people going, why can't you just do the same thing again? And I was like, because A, I don't want to. B, I wrote this record when I was 18, 19. I'm now 24 or whatever, you know, or 23 roughly. You just can't be in the same place as you were when you were coming of age again. And also, I had listened to my first record, I'd heard it, I played it live, and there were things about it that I'd started to want to not change, but that I'd wanted to develop. You know, like there's no bottom end in it at all. You know, if I play it live now, we've added a lot of bottom end things to make it work with my new music, but it was very much of a time, and it was referencing very kind of tinny, thin, aggressive 80s music, which I love, but I don't want to do it forever. You know, it was during a time when I was obsessed with that sound, and then I became obsessed with another sound, and then I become obsessed with another sound, and it's like going through phases. You just move, you know.
Do you tend to have a sort of frame of reference or conceit, a palette you work with? Because yeah, the first album, obviously the reviews would you know, you'd get, whether you agree with it or not, you'd get comparisons to, you know, whatever, Depeche Mode, New Order. Saw you open for New Order, actually.
Yeah, it was good fun.
It was a good time. But yeah, you would be compared to like sort of like 80s British synth pop, and then the second album had a lot of kind of disco and reggae influences. And, I mean, this is what my ears.
No, you're right, it did, yeah.
And then Supervision had it had that kind of sophistopop thing, like, you know, like Style Council.
Slightly smoother, yeah.
Yeah, or like
almost leaning towards Gritty Politti in places.
Gritty
Yeah.
Or like Lisa Stansfield came to mind.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
references. But like, so I don't know if you were actually listening to stuff, but do you sort of like set with a template, like this is the palette I'm going to work from?
100%, yeah. I usually always pick a palette. Like for this record, there was very particular synthesizers I would use. And there's a similar bass sound across this whole record. There's a Triton R&B bass that I used on so many tracks. You'd find things that belong to the world that you're leaning into, and then you tend to use them again like an artist would have a palette. And it helps having those limitations. All producers talk about the helpfulness of limitations, because otherwise it's kind of just like every track could be a different genre. And I think it's helpful to have a world that you exist within, and to not stick to it religiously. If something fits slightly outside of that, like I said, there's an R&B reference, but then on one or two tracks there's definitely slightly more of a hip hop reference. Like there's a track called Cabin Fever that we play live that is definitely more of a hip hop reference. There's a few samples on the record. There's a track where I really wanted to do something that was almost similar to that kind of chipmunk sampling sound that Kanye used to use on stuff like Through the Wire. I've kind of done my own version of that, you know. So there's just moments that I loved as a teenager that maybe I wasn't brave enough to move into as a white middle class woman when I was younger. And as I've got older, I just thought, fuck it, I love it, I'm doing it, you know.
So this album, do you have a title for it yet?
I do, but I'm not saying it.
It's just us.
Yeah.
All right.
There's evidence of it.
Evidence.
There's
right.
evidence
like if
of
we,
it, yeah. Like
okay.
if you look, there are Easter eggs, yeah.
Okay. I actually might know what it is, but I'm not.
You never know.
But I'm not.
You might know. You might know.
But okay, so that's TBD. But what else can you tell me about the record? Now, I did mention before you came here, like this entirely, you made it, everything's written, produced entirely by you.
Yeah, I think something that's always been a bit of a confusion over the years is that, like, I've had engineers, and I had a co-writer on the first album, obviously, and a co-producer and a mentor on the first album. We had a very close relationship, and it was a very, very, very important relationship in my life. It went sour, it went wrong, as these things do. But I think something that people have never grasped, and I don't know why, because I have said it, but pretty much I would say 90% of every single thing that you hear on every single one of my records, apart from like the saxophone and Let Me Down Gently and a couple of bass parts that I would sing to bassists, and maybe they'd play it, but I don't have a room full of musicians come in and play my records. I compose and play every single part. So if you hear 8 keyboard parts on the record and all the shaker parts and all the hi-hat parts and the snare sound, I picked all those sounds and I played them all myself. And I don't think people understand that.
Well, I mean, I hate this. I hate to say it, but this is okay. You started as a duo, you and a man. Unfortunately, I think there are some people in society who think, or in the industry, I should say, that it's like female singer, like the guy is the doing, he's the
Yep.
brains of the operation, she's the face
It's a
of the operation.
huge assumption. And I get it. Like, I get it because it's also, you can't blame it on everyone because that is also a really common situation. Like, I'm not taking anything away from those other females that do that in any way. Like, I love so many singers that are just singers and lyricists. There's nothing wrong with it. But it has made it difficult to kind of be believed that the guy in the room wasn't composing all the music. Yeah, there's additional production every now and then. Yeah, there might be someone that goes, actually, I think we should add this here, or actually, I don't think this mix is right, or actually, I think the bottom end isn't right, or actually, it's not like nobody else is ever involved towards the end. They are. And also, you need to share your work with people to get perspective. It's really important. But essentially, no one's ever written a chord sequence for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, ever. No one's ever, there's a reason why all the parts sound like they come from the same place on each album, like you can tell there's like a style I have. And I think that's been really frustrating for me over the years to kind of have people go, so who did all of this? And I'm like, I fucking did it.
Are they
You know?
are they still asking you this, 15, 16 years after?
I think it's maybe less like this now, but I think one thing I do find slightly irritating, shall we say, is that if a guy, I don't want to mention anyone's name because I'm not here to make a point about anyone, but there are certain people that make records that are self-produced, and it's like nobody questions that they're self-produced. No, nobody questions, and it's talked about constantly, and it's always like, oh, they do it all themselves in their bedroom. I'm like, no one says this about me, and I have a studio in my kitchen, and I do everything there. And before that, even before I had a studio in my house, it was still, like I can sing you every single keyboard part I wrote on the first album, and it's extensive. I think there's like maybe 2 or 3 parts that somebody else added. It's like it's not. It's just annoying, basically.
I'm annoyed. It is annoying. So like, when Trouble in Paradise came out, or was being made, at what point did LaRue become just you and Ben? It was midway through that, right?
So we'd written about, I think most of Kiss and Not Tell was written. Let Me Down Gently, I think, was written. We had arguments about that song. That's okay, you do. And then we had an engineer that was working with us in a studio in Devon. Everything kind of fell apart. They weren't getting on. No one was really getting on. Everyone was having a bit of an emotional crisis. There was issues with the label. There was a lot of tension. There was a lot of pressure. And essentially one day I woke up and Ben was gone. And that was just what he needed to do at the time. And that's actually completely fine. And I think then Uptight Downtown got partially rewritten. Silent Partner got written from scratch. Sex Attack was mostly written, but not produced and not all recorded. There was it was kind of a mishmash of like things that were half done and half not done. But I was pretty much the only musician. I was the only musician in the room.
So you were still on the major label Polydor at the time.
Yeah.
And all this kind of transitional stuff was happening. And did Supervision was your first
Supervision, yeah, Supervision
independent record?
Yeah, so there was actually kind of a period where I was making another record with somebody, and I so don't want to talk about that. It's not even funny. It just that turned into a legal situation.
Is that the record that got scrapped?
Yeah, there was a record there was half a record that got scrapped, and it wasn't a record I probably would have wanted to put out anyway, but it was a product of a bad relationship with the engineer that hung on from Trouble in Paradise. And then I basically realized that I had just put a couple of years into something that no one was going to hear. And it was putting more time in between Trouble in Paradise and me releasing new music, which was really stressing me out. And I essentially just wrote and composed Supervision in 4 months. So I wrote that whole record in 4 months. I don't know how. I have no idea how. I think it was just out of sheer panic. And I think that's the other reason I didn't have a problem with not promoting it, because I was kind of like, that was just a record to get something between me and Trouble in Paradise. The years were just ticking by, and I didn't quite know how they were ticking by. And I remember thinking things like, I loved the 80s, and it was like a whole decade. And that's kind of the entire time that's now almost between me and my. I was like, how the fuck did that happen? You know, you're like, there's like whole eras that happened through that decade, and I've just seems like I've done nothing. It's just terrifying. It's just absolutely terrifying. Life was just kind of flying by, and I realized I just needed to get something out, and my relationship, my personal relationship, had just kind of hit a really ending kind of moment, and Automatic Driver is about that, which is the first track we're going to play tonight. And I think it was just spilling out of me, you know, Gullible Fool spilled out of me, things just spilled out of me on that record. And it was the first time as well that I'd had this thing where I was essentially just had a laptop at my kitchen table and a couple of MIDI keyboards and my guitar and a bass, and I was like, fuck it, I just need to do this like right now. And I hadn't built my studio in my house yet, and I didn't want to work outside of my house because I love working in a home environment. I don't really like going to a studio and working. It just doesn't really vibe me up. And I was sitting there and I realized what I do is like so many songwriters do. You just kind of sing a melody down over what you've done. And it's just sort of gobbledygook. There's no words. It's just like, you know, there's just no words and just a melody. And what I found so fascinating about it is that more than ever, more than this record, more than any other record, I was just able to sit there and transcribe the exact, like it was like they were all twisted inside the melody. And I could just sit there and listen to the melody from my voice notes and the things I'd recorded and just write them out. So it just happened so fast. It was like my brain knew what it wanted to say, but my consciousness didn't. And it was a really cathartic experience.
It's interesting that you know there were all these delays between the second and third album and these kind of false starts and things that didn't happen, and yet then when you finally did put out a third album, it was such a quick process because that you got some of the best reviews, critical reviews of your career on that record.
Yeah, people seem to really like it. It's a shame I didn't. In a way, it's a shame I didn't get to promote it. But I also think everything happens for a reason, and I wouldn't have made this album if that hadn't happened. The pandemic hadn't happened, so I'm grateful for everything that's happened, even if it felt negative at the time. But yeah, I feel like, especially tracks like Gullible Fool. I really liked Other Side as well, and I would have loved to release that as a single. But I also feel like songs like Do You Feel, I feel like I really got a handle on my groove as a musician on that record. You know, there's like some parts that I went to after I'd written the record at home. I think this is where a lot of people get confused. Like there's a producer I know called Dan Carey, who's a really brilliant British producer. We've been friends for years. And he has a studio very near to me where I live. And I'd written and composed the record, but then I went and recorded it with him, and you know he kind of added a couple of really amazing synth textures to the album. He has some synthesizers I don't own and stuff, and so he obviously has a co-production credit. But the minute you give somebody that co-production credit, people are like, they don't see what you did on your own, and I think that's what's really tough. But that record was very much where when I took it to him, he was like, "You've really got a handle on your groove." You know, there's a couple of parts that he was like, you've really lifted as a musician during this record. You know, from playing with yourself, you've really got a handle on who you are as a musician, and I'm just so much more of a relaxed player at that point, and it made me so much more able to make a record like that.
Kind of hopping around in the timeline, but when I was saying, you know, it was sort of transitional when the second record came out, and you were still on Polydor at the time, and then you became a solo artist. Like, what obstacles did you face? And we've already sort of touched on it, but like basically proving that you were the brains of the operation, that you were completely fine to go it alone, that you didn't need to have Ben or another partner, another producer doing the work for you. Was that something you had to like convince powers that be, the label you were on at the time, or a manager, or anyone in the business about?
Yeah, it just didn't work. It was like insanity. It was like the minute Ben left, the panic. It was like panic stricken. It was like, what do we do with her? You know, what are we gonna do? And I was like, I can do this with my eyes closed. You know, it was incredibly insulting, and that didn't help our relationship. It didn't help any of our relationships at all. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to be in charge of absolutely every single stem and file on the record and handing that mixed to the label. But that doesn't not make me the composer, the arranger, and the producer. I think it's a difficult one when you're trying to convince people of something and essentially they already have a view of you that, yeah, but you would say that. It was like our relationship was so tempestuous. There was no way they were going to believe anything that I fucking said. They hated me and I
The
hated them.
label hated
They
you.
fucking hated me and I fucking hated them right back. Like I had the guy that signed me was a guy called Nick Shemansky, and me and him were tight. We were fine. And then he moved to Island Records and he was like, "I'm really sorry. I got to go." And I was like, "I get it. Don't worry. Go." But then it was like the people that took over, it was just like a nightmare. It was just a complete nightmare. And I don't feel like anyone got me. And that is a problem. Your management and your record label do need to understand you. And they also just wanted me to do things that I didn't want to do. I never wanted to do big dance tracks with big dance DJs that I don't want to mention the name of, but I didn't want to do that. They were doing that with all the other female artists that were surrounding me at the time, and I just wasn't interested. I was like, this is not me. It's not me as a person. It's not the kind of music I like. It's not the kind of thing I'm into, and I don't want to do it. And they basically saw it as me kind of turning down, as they put it, millions of pounds and opportunities. And I was like, I never did this job to make millions of pounds. I did it to make the music I want to make. And I did it to be the artist I want to be. I didn't do it to make your bank account happier. I didn't do it so that you could get your Christmas bonus. No offense. But it's just not why I'm here. And they kind of just hated me for that you know.
Their Christmas bonus.
Yeah, they wanted their fucking Christmas bonus. I just wasn't interested, and I think they saw that as an arrogance. They saw that as me thinking I was better than other people, and it's not that I think I'm better than anyone else. I just didn't want to do it.
I do think I read an interview you did, I believe it was with The Guardian, when they either polyed or dropped you, or agreed when you asked to be dropped, when you
Yeah, I
asked to
was
be like,
like,
oh,
please let me
you
go.
were so happy, you were like,
Please,
yay.
please let me go. Yeah.
So, we've talked, obviously, you've had a lot of ups and downs, and we talked about sort of what was going on in the background of your second and third record in your personal and professional life. But in terms of this new title, as yet to be titled album, or, secretly titled album, what was going on, like, both personally and professionally? It seems like you're in a happy place right now.
Yeah, I'm in the best place I've ever been. I'm really happy. I'm really relaxed. I found out things about myself in the last sort of 5 years. I have like mild autism and ADHD. Who doesn't? I think everyone fucking does now. It's not surprising, but I think it's become a bit of a boring narrative, so I'm not going to go on about it. But I think that was quite important. It was important finding that out about myself.
Do you mind me asking? I mean, I know you said you don't want to go on, but like, how did you find that out, or how did that inform the creative process for you?
It was it doesn't actually it actually weirdly doesn't inform the creative process, but it makes sense as to how I can listen to the same parts for 19 hours, and just be like, why is this not exactly how I want it to be? The level of perfectionism I can try and reach can get ridiculous sometimes, or to other people it can seem ridiculous. But I think it's good for my work. I don't think it affects me negatively in that area at all. But I think there were certain things, that actually I had to address about myself that I had noticed, and they did need addressing. You notice them in relationships, you notice them with your family. There were certain things that I just felt like I had been saying, this is like normal, fuck off, for like years. And certain people, sort of like my sister, and people were like, I don't think it is. I don't think it is. And they're not big things, but I think they're things that everyone has to take responsibility for. I think it doesn't matter what you have or what you're born with. It's up to you to take responsibility for it and learn about it. And I did. And I think that's been a big thing. And then also just finding your right place in life. Like I've been in lots of relationships in my life that were really, 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 really wrong for me, work and personal wise. I think I've been one of those people that has ever people pleased, and it's got me in a lot of shit situations. I think everyone can relate to that. And it's about knowing where you're right and where you're wrong. And actually, I found so much relaxation, so much calmness where I didn't have that before. Like, even doing things like this years ago would have spun me out like 10, 15 years ago. There was a lot of things about my job that would spin me out and I would get really stressed about, and it just didn't make it fun. And it should be fun. Like, why else are you doing music? I remember when I met my new manager and he was like, maybe you just shouldn't do this job. He doesn't sound fun. Like, if you're going to do music, he's like, of all the jobs you can do, if you're going to do music, you might as well fucking enjoy it. He's like, if you're not enjoying it, why are you doing it? And I couldn't agree with him more. I sat in front of him, we hadn't decided to work together yet, and he said, I don't want to argue with you, I don't want to have any kind of relationship like that, I want it to be a free and easy relationship, otherwise there's no point. And I was like, no, I totally agree. And he said, if we can't find a way for you to be relaxed and enjoy this, I don't see the point. And I was like, I agree with you. And I think it was so much about trust. I really don't want to put a fine point on this in any way, but I got really fucked over. I got really fucked over by my record label. I got really fucked over by my first management company. I got really fucked over by my lawyer. I got really fucked over by my accountant. And they all kind of worked together to do that to me. And it does make you tense. It does make you not trust people. It does make relationships difficult. There's no getting away from it. But you can do the work to heal that, without sounding really fucking cheesy. You can, and I have, and it's an amazing place to be at. Yeah, it really is.
I'm happy for you. Well, didn't you say when you were very young when the first LaRue album came out? Did you say 18, 19?
I was 18, 19 when I was making it, and then I was just turned 21 in the March of 2009. So I was 20 when it started happening, essentially.
So when you talk about being fucked over or whatever, I mean, how much experience did you have in the world, even general in business, to kind of know?
I've never had a job.
Yeah.
I've never had a normal job. I
This
never
is a
went to
common
uni.
story too.
I came out of high school. Well, I think it's your equivalent of high school. And did this. So we have a thing called sixth form, which is from like the ages of like 16, 17 to 18, 19, depending on where you fall in the year. And I was already making records at that point with Ben. So I was kind of like, why am I even finishing school? I was like, this is pointless. I was like, I've got some serious tunes. So that kind of teenage arrogance, I was like, I'm not fucking going to university. Everyone was like, are you sure you don't want to like study music at uni? I was like, no. Study it. Why would I do that? Like, I can't read music or anything. I play by ear. So I also, that would never have worked. And I just didn't see the point in it. But actually entering the music industry at that age, it doesn't matter how much you think you trust your lawyer or how much you get your parents to check your contracts. They don't fucking know, like I thought I was safe, and I so wasn't. I look at pictures of me now as well. If I don't look myself up, obviously, but if I ever see pictures or someone says, oh my God, look, have you seen this? You look like a baby. I am a baby. Like I look about 12. It's mental. You look at it and you think, I don't actually know how I was coping with that then. I remember I had my sister as my PA for a while, and I think that really helped me kind of do things like come out here with people I didn't know and go on tour, but I was terrified like all the time. All the fucking time. Yeah, it's constantly.
Well, I mean, it's a pretty common story because a lot of pop stars or rock stars or whatever, I mean, they usually are, especially nowadays, are even younger than that. They're teenagers when they come out. What advice, now that you know, would you give to someone who's around that age, who's kind of being thrown into this whole new world with not even that much life experience, let alone business experience?
Do you know what? I've been asked that a number of times, and I wish I had a good answer. I wish I had a more intelligent answer. It's like everything. It's like when you have that friend that is fucking it up, and you tell them, but they're not ready to hear it. I wasn't ready to hear shit at that age. Like it. You think the decisions you're making are right. You think the people you're putting your trust in are right. It's very hard for someone to come in on that and go, hey, you might want to check this and this and this, especially if it's been your dream. Like it'd been my dream to be a songwriter and an artist since I was like 3. when you start to make that happen, you're not listening to other people really. And I think it's very difficult. Maybe some people are more astute than I was. Maybe some people aren't. I think it's just luck of the draw. Like, in a way, the people that I was working with, in some ways they could be trusted. In other ways, they were looking after themselves. It's like it's very, very, very difficult to judge. I think and even me and my new manager, it's taken him a long time to prove that I can trust him. I love him to bits. He's like my big brother, but he's been like, you need stop doing that thing that you did with those other people. I'm not that guy. But you just, like with everything and with everyone, it takes time to learn that you can't make people learn before they learn. Everyone has to learn and make mistakes as they make mistakes. You can't, there's not a lot you can do about it. I could give advice, but it's unlikely anyone's going to change the way they do anything because of the advice that I were to give. I would say make sure your lawyer is not connected to anyone else that you work with. Yeah. Make sure your lawyer doesn't also work for your record label or your management company, and your accountants. I would say that's kind of probably the only thing I would say. Everything else, everyone's going to do what they're going to do,
I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
So we're all going to applaud that. You also talked about, I mean, obviously you had this ambition that you wanted to be a musician since age of 3, but it doesn't seem like you necessarily expected to be famous or
No.
Grammy winner, obviously a deserving Grammy winner, but like to have all this very big success and with the first record in America. And there's been a lot, like there's more talk now about how it's kind of that cliche, like, oh, you get everything you wanted and you can't, like Chapel Roan's talked a lot about fame. And there's other people that are talking more about I'm going to swear, what a mind fuck it can be when all that does happen, even if you wanted it, if you've been working for it, like Chapel has for a long time. She was signed when she was a teenager. So like, how did you deal with that? And then when you decide to go back into it and put another record out, are you like, oh man, don't want to do this again?
Yeah. What am I asking for? Yeah, I get you. It is a hard one, because also that's what the record labels and the management use against you as well straight away. They're like, well, you you wanted this. We didn't come to you. In a way they do, and in a way they don't. You put music up. Then back in the day, it was like you put music up on MySpace, and then a bunch of people call you, and they're like, "Do you want to come in for a meeting?" It's like, it doesn't happen now.
Is that what happened?
Yeah, that's what happened.
It was MySpace?
It's MySpace.
That's pretty cool, actually. Side note, who were in your top 8 friends?
Oh, fuck, I don't know. That
was like really important then. It was political.
What? Weirdly, Chromeo and Kavinsky and people like that were like, yeah, I was into them then. Yeah, cool. we're all friends now.
I don't think I want to hear the MySpace story, because I didn't actually know that, but I want you to finish your thought about sort of what I was asking.
Yeah, no, it's like I remember like once being in my garden, my parents' garden, not my garden, and I used to listen to a lot of Jerry Rafferty. You guys all know Baker Street, but that's like the worst one. There's a lot of other great tunes. Right Down the Line recently became more famous because I think it was in Euphoria or something. And but that was like my favorite tune as a kid. Me and my mum used to listen to it in her car. And I remember I was in the garden, and I don't know where my mum had been asking me questions about being a musician or something, I don't know. And I was like, I legitimately do not want to be famous. Like, it's not on my agenda. Like, also because famous to you as a kid is like Britney Spears, And I was like, that's not my jam. I mean, like, I don't want to be that. I'm not that girl.
Look what fame did to her. So
well, she has some amazing pop songs. Like Toxic is sick. But and I respect manufactured pop music a lot. Everyone likes a Backstreet Boys tune every now and then. But
smart.
Yeah. But I think I was like, I'm not looking for that. And I remember when I made this record, the first record, sorry, it was all influenced by French electronica and, like 80s synth pop and like more underground synth pop from the 80s as well, like slightly more unusual stuff. And, like Rare Heaven 17 records and, early Human League records and shit like that. A lot of the stuff actually Ben introduced me to that I just got obsessed with really quickly. And I just had never, it had never crossed my mind that, you know, even when we wrote Bulletproof and people said that's a hit, I was like, what do you mean? You know what you just, it
You
doesn't
really didn't
compute.
think like because I've interviewed other people that were like, oh, when I wrote that song, I knew that was the
No,
one.
I had no fucking idea. Everyone kept saying, you know, like Ben had a friend called Rollo who used to write for and produce for Faithless. So it was a big dance band in the 90s. And I remember he said he played it to Rollo and that he was like, you know, you'll never have to work again. And I was like, what? I'm 19. I don't even ever had a job as it is. Like, what do you mean I'll never have to work again? It didn't make any sense to me. Like, you can't tell a 19, 20-year-old that and that's gonna compute. It doesn't compute. It can't. I had never tried to write a pop hit. I wasn't trying to write, you know, I listened to Madonna, I listened to Wham, but I didn't feel like I was hitting that. You know, I was like, I'm referencing that, but I'm not hitting that. And then Bulletproof came out, and my manager managed to make Jimmy Iovine. Jimmy Iovine hated it. Apparently he hated Bulletproof. It's like, what the fuck is this? I hate this. And my manager was like, you're fucking deaf. You need to, you know, my old manager's a very aggressive guy.
He
And
wasn't wrong.
he was, I guess he wasn't wrong. But I didn't hear it. I just heard this like dun 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 dun. You know, like still now, like we play a different version of it now slightly. You won't be disappointed, but it's like it's so tinny and aggressive. I was just like, I don't get it. What do you mean this is like a global hit? It didn't compute to me. It almost still doesn't. You know, especially when people say it's really cool. I'm like, it is not. I don't, I don't get like I think In for the Kill is to me that will always be cool.
The Grammy nominated song In for the Kill.
Yeah, I'll always think that's kind of cool, but and there are other tracks on that record like Colorless Color that I think are cool. Yeah. Thank you. And Quicksand, you know, I think that's cool. But I never thought Bulletproof was that cool. So I was just like, I don't get it. Like I was a cool obsessive, you know, and I was like, oh, this one? I just didn't understand. So yeah, when it started to kick off, especially out here, it was the shock levels, especially because I'd only been promoting my record for like 3 months at that time. We did a residency in the UK at a place called Notting Hill Arts Club. In for the Kill came out, the Scream remix came out. That started to go off in a different world. And then Bulletproof started to come out, and they were like, in 2 weeks, you're going to America. And I was like, still living at my parents' house. I still had my cork board on my wall that used to have my homework on it, you know? And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? What do you mean I'm going to America? They were like, yes, you're going to play San Francisco, and then you're going to play LA, and then you're going to play here, and then you're going to play Chicago. And I was like, what the fuck are you on about? I don't understand. And I was terrified. And then I became really terrified of flying. And I was like, I don't want to go. I just basically pretty much cried from the moment they told me until the time I went. I was not like, there was no part of me that was okay. And then I came out here. My keyboard player that I was really good friends with at the time couldn't get a visa because she had a record. And, and I came out here with like 3 guys I didn't know. And I was just like, this is shit. I just didn't get it, and I was too scared to do it. I did it. It was fine. Like I got over it, but I didn't understand how it was happening. It didn't compute with me in any way. In the UK, it was like the only people that you'd heard breaking in America were like Robbie Williams, and I was
Robbie
like, well,
Williams
I'm
actually didn't
not,
really ever break here.
yeah.
Well, he had one hit here.
Well, yeah,
but
this is what I mean.
Angels,
It
but yeah,
doesn't happen.
he actually never really broke
But
here. Actually,
you see what I mean? It just doesn't like. Okay, Bowie's a different example because he's an international. It's a different thing. But to have a UK artist break in America within 6 months of their career starting, that doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. So I was like, that's never going to happen. It just wasn't on my radar. So when they said it was way too much for me. It was already too much for me what was happening in the UK, let alone them saying, oh, it's happening in Australia, it's happening in Poland, it's happening in America, it's happening in Russia. It just didn't, it was very overwhelming.
do you think now? I mentioned, people like Chapel Roan speaking out, or just people talk about mental health more in general. Do you think now there would be more support in place in for someone
Totally.
going through what you were going through in 2009?
Totally. The music industry is a very different place now. It's a very different place now. You just can't get away with the same shit you used to be able to get away with. I think there a management companies like my management company are super aware of mental health issues. We're all genuinely friends. They're all here tonight, and I think there's a genuine support there. If I say, hey, I'm not okay, it's not like, oh well, fuck you, which is what it used to be like. I remember once I did a gig here at the Fonda, and there was like 100 people from Universal coming down, and I started to get laryngitis, and I did sound check, and I was like, I can't sing, and I started to get like flu symptoms and all of this, and I was also just terrified. And I said to my manager, I don't think I can do tonight, which is also a big deal as an artist. Canceling a show is not fun. There's nothing fun about it when 2,000-3,000 people are coming and you're about to let them all down, but you also don't feel like you can handle it in any way. It's a horrible place to be in. You're like, I'm not going to be able to sing properly or at all. Like if you have a sore throat, you can't sing In for the Kill. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, because I mean,
you did, yeah, it doesn't.
Not
work.
a husky song.
It doesn't work. And I would never mime. It's like it's a really tough one. And I remember him just saying, in a way, quite rightly, you can't fucking do that. It's like it's this evening. But it was also the aggression and the kind of absolute no with which it was said. There's no human care or understanding that I'm A, terrified, and B, very sick. I then saw a doctor the next day, and he was like, you have polyps and pus all over your throat. You shouldn't even be flying. You shouldn't be traveling. You shouldn't be doing anything. And he did make me perform that night. It obviously made me worse. And I just feel like, yeah, maybe they'd be like, it's up to you. It's a discussion, but it certainly wouldn't be an aggressive discussion, and it would be a balanced discussion, and it certainly wouldn't be like it'd be put on me or be a threat on me if we had that conversation. They would understand. They would make me aware of the challenges essentially that I'd face if I did cancel it. But it'd be like talking to your family or talking to your parents about something. It wouldn't be like talking to your horrific boss about something, and I just think there's a big difference there now. It's just the world's changed a lot. People have a lot more understanding for that. And I don't think you can get away with the shit people used to get away with. I really don't.
Which I'm happy about. I think a lot of artists would be happy. Let's applaud that. Change, progress. Um, were there times, like I said, every time you re-enter the fray 5-6 years and you're like, okay, I'm going to do this again, even if things are better now? Was there, and you were telling me that story about the manager going, if this isn't fun, like maybe you shouldn't do it. Have there been times when you thought about maybe not quitting music entirely, but maybe like writing for other people, producing for other people, just becoming a Max Martin, type of person?
Yeah, I've definitely considered it. I think there's times when you think, hey, it's got harder now. It's a lot harder now. It's a lot more hard work. Like people like Chapel Roan, they didn't just start yesterday. Like there's 10 years of work that's gone into those careers. I think people that are breaking now have been doing it for a long time. I broke and I'd been doing it for no time at all. And that used to be quite common then. It's not common anymore. I'll probably have to do the same amount of work now, if not more, to get back to any kind of place that I was in before. Everybody accepts that now.
Do you want that though? Is that what you want?
I don't think you can ever get back to where you were, but I just mean in terms of like even just visibility, right? Social media, everything's changed. Press has changed. You used to be able to be on the cover of like 3 magazines and everyone was like, I know who you are. That doesn't happen anymore. Everything happens in tiny sections. There's like everything's like a subscription service. We were talking about this earlier, literally 2 hours ago. And everything happens in a kind of world of its own now. There's a few people that are right at the top all the time. And then there's everything else kind of happens in its own world until it reaches a threshold. I'm not trying to do anything in particular apart from promote the music that I've made. But I've obviously put the time into this music for a reason, because I've loved making it and I want other people to hear it. So you just kind of have to work under that basis. I think whatever happens, happens. I'm certainly in a better place now as the person that I am to deal with whatever happens. But yeah, of course, I've also never invited the press into my private life for a very particular reason. I think there are other people that have maybe sort of thrived on that and used that as a kind of a kind of a duality to what they do artistically, and I've never done that. Like, people have never written about my private life, and I'm really, really, really grateful for it. No one's ever pried, you know, like my private life has stayed my private life.
I think that's a good thing because there are so many artists where, like, whether it's like, what they ate today, because they
Yeah,
post on, like, yeah, there's no mystique anymore. And actually, a lot of the bands we're talking about in, like, the 80s or whatever, like, you didn't know that much about Robert
no
Smith or Nick
Prince. Oh
Cave or
no,
Morrissey, even. Like, you had to interpret the lyrics and figure it out, but you didn't know everything. I think
no.
there's something to be said for a little mystique.
They would have found it difficult to survive, I think, in these times. You know, I think the pressure on being a kind of social media person, I found it really difficult. It's also why my social media is crap. Like, I don't
We got to
it
go back to MySpace.
yeah, like everyone, I remember the label saying, like, when Twitter first came out, it was like 2009, and I remember them pulling me into a room and being like, this is going to be huge, and I was like, this is lame AF. I was like, people are going to start writing 40 characters about what? I was like, what the fuck am I going to say? I'm on the tour bus. Like, I just found it really reductive. I was like, this is lame. Like, this is really lame. And all the people that I'd referenced as an artist, I was like, they would never do this. They would think this is shit. I don't want to do this. And then 10 years later, I was like, I should have done that. Shit. Yeah, I should
You
have.
started on MySpace. No, I don't think you started. Can you tell me I don't know the MySpace origin story. I
Well,
think that'd be fun to hear.
basically, we just had like In for the Kill and Tiger Lily, I think. Maybe Quicksand. I can't remember. There was like 3 songs. You know, it had a little player on the right hand side. And
Yeah, MySpace was. I
everyone
mean,
here is old.
MySpace like broke like Kate Nash, Katy Perry, Lily Allen, like a lot of people, a lot of female.
Yeah,
artists.
Lily, it was the same. Yeah, and it was like all from around that time. And you know, I had like 3 tracks on there. We had 3 tracks on there. And I remember one day, I mean, Ben had been in the music industry a bit before. He'd like done some kind of dance project thing in the 90s, I think, and he was always connected to Rollo from Faithless, and he had, he had publishing deals and stuff. So people had his phone number, is the only reason I'm bringing this up. And I remember like one day we were just sat there in his flat where we'd been in, he had this small flat in Teddington in West London where we'd been making the record, but he had like a Mackie desk and we had like 5 synthesizers and that was it. And we made it on a coffee table. And I remember like one day we were just sat there and like both of our phones just would not stop ringing. It was like you'd pick up one phone call and another phone call would come through and another phone call would come through. You put it down, another one would come through. And it was like basically what used to happen then, which never happens anymore. This is very, very rare. This is just not the way the music industry works anymore, really, unless a song goes viral on TikTok, which is a very different situation. But that's the kind of today's version of it. But it was like an A&R man from a record label would hear your song and then they'd essentially tell somebody else about it in a meeting or at a bar or at another gig, and then they'd all be like, oh fuck, we need to get on this now, because it becomes like a competitive like bidding war situation straight away. So essentially just every record label and every publishing company just started calling us on one day. It was like nothing, everything. And then we basically just had our pick of publishers, record labels, and stuff. But it was just from having my tracks on MySpace.
I miss MySpace.
Crazy. I know, I do too. Wish it was that easy now. Shit the bed. So much easier. Now it's like, when are you going to go viral? I'm like, I don't know.
I feel like one of your songs might end up on. Well, I feel like one of your songs might end up on TikTok. I mean, some songs like, I don't know, like Teenage Dirtbag by Wheatus ends up being like some kind of challenge, and all of a sudden it's a hit again.
Yeah. Bulletproof's had a few like TikTok moments over the last few years, but to make it happen with new music is difficult. Yeah.
So going back to new music, I mean, we're going to hear some tonight. I believe you're going to play one
I'm
song.
gonna play one
tonight.
track.
But
yeah.
when will do you have? I know you said you're not sure when the album's going to come out, but will there be a single or a track that people get to hear?
There's going to be quite a few singles actually. Like, this is just my opinion, but I don't really feel like what I try to not do on records is have like filler tracks, filler moments where you're like, yeah, anyway, I'm just waiting for the next tune. I've like it. That's why my albums are short as well. Like, I'm not into like, I will never make a 20-track album ever. I will never subject you to that. for me, I usually do 8, 9, 10 tracks because they're the best things that came out of me in those 3 years. And I don't have loads of other tracks that I didn't show you either. It's like I know when I'm writing a good idea and I know when I'm writing a shit idea, and I just don't finish the shit ones. Sometimes I go back and check things from old files and stuff, and I go back to old things. I've actually Baby Line that I'm playing tonight was one of those ones that for some reason, I just thought it was. I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but I put it in kind of my folder that is like stuff that I'm like, not sure. And then I go back to it usually every 6 months and check if I was being an idiot or not. And I went back to it and I found it and I was like, this is fucking great. What is wrong with you? And then I finished it straight away. But you need that perspective, and you need to be objective, and that's why often it's good to not listen to things for like 6 months, which actually I learned from Bernard from New Order. He said he writes everything and then he walks away from it and doesn't listen to the whole entire record for like a year. And then he listens to it like a year later and he then knows if it's shit or not. And I was like, that's a really fucking good point. So, yeah, I think I tend to just write a short body of work and then can't remember where I was going with the question or
Well,
the
I was
answer.
wondering, people are going to have the treat of hearing a new song tonight, but in terms of like it being streamed,
Just go off on a
when
mad
is something
tangent.
going to be released for the public to stream? Or
Oh, I was
whatever?
talking about singles. Yeah, so on this record, that's Thank You. One glass of wine, done. There's gonna be 4 or 5 singles from this record. Yeah, they won't. They may not all. But they're not going to be bulletproof.
We'll see. We'll see.
We'll
but
see.
When's the first one going to come out? Do you have a tentative street date?
It will be in the next couple of months. Yeah, it'll be in the next couple of months. Yeah, yeah. I'd like to get something out as soon as possible.
Exciting.
Yeah.
People have been waiting a while, and I know people are waiting to hear you perform, including that song. So I'm going to wrap this up. But is there any? But we're going to take a couple questions from the audience.
Yeah.
But is there anything else you want to sort of talk about this new project, this new era?
No, I think we've covered. I think we've covered a lot. Actually, it was a great interview. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You were awesome. I really enjoyed it. Put up the lights a little bit and raise your hand if you have a question. Right over here. You raise your hand.
I love LA. I think it's great. I mean, it's much warmer than the UK, so especially at this time of year. I really like doing I did a walk today in Runyon Canyon. I really like doing things like that, and I think it's just it's a very different environment to the UK. When you first come here from the UK, it's like going to some kind of alien world. I'm not gonna lie, but I've grown to really love it over the years. When I first came here, I found it really scary. And now I have quite a lot of friends here and a kind of network here, and I really enjoy it. Yeah, I really enjoy it. Yeah. Do you live here? Yes, I do. You do, yeah. Of course, yeah. When did you go? Have you been to London? Yes. Nice. Okay, you've really been around. Okay.
I was in London last week. I flew back on Sunday.
No way.
It was actually pretty warm there.
Oh, yeah, that's what my mum said.
Yeah,
she was like, you've been missing the good weather.
It was a good time. Anyone else over here in the back?
Hey, thank you. Wow. Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. We used to use a synth that Ben had in a rack that was called a Matrix. And then we also there was a Roland XV as well that was a rack synth. And there's a lot of like really kind of tinny sounds that came from that. And then the other thing that I still use on every record is the Juno 106. I used it a lot on this record. So yeah, the Juno 106 kind of runs through everything, and then there's been like sprinkles of Korg and Moog here and there, yeah. And also DX7 on this record a little bit, yeah. No worries. Hey. No, I can't read music, yeah. Oh. Well, like when you play by ear, the way it is the way it works is like I'll just sit down. So I taught myself like keyboards to a certain extent. Like if you're driven enough, I guess. I obviously have musical ability. Like I was born with a certain amount of musical ability. Like there's music in my family. My great grandfather was the founder of the London Chamber Orchestra, so it does run in my blood to a certain extent. And my dad's also an amazing guitar player, so he played a lot of like blues and bluegrass when I was growing up. So I grew up on a lot of like really old black music, and he played a lot of like stuff like Blind Blake and stuff like that, and he can play guitar to like quite a high degree, and I always found that really inspiring. But I think when you're really into music and you have a musical ear already, like I don't have I have parts of perfect pitch, but not other parts of it. Like if you play a G, I can't tell you that's a G, but I if I sing a note, it'll be in key with the exact note, like it won't be out. Do you know what I mean? And I think so. There's obviously something that's innately there, but also you'll just sit down at a keyboard or a piano or guitar, or whatever it is, once you learn chords, and you just know what you want the next chord to be. So it might take you a minute to find it, and I'll be like, nah, 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 and then I'll be like, I want it to go, nah, and then you just find it. Like you just find that note, and then you find the rest of the chord. You're like, nah, 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 and then it just takes a minute to find it. But once you find it, you found it, and then when you sing a bass line or you want a bass line, you just know what you want in your head. So as long as you know what you want in your head, and you can play an instrument, then all you need to do is find those notes on the instrument and play it. It's not. It actually makes it easier. Most people that I know that read music can't write music. It becomes a stumbling block because they're used to learning other people's music, and actually they find it difficult to write their own. So it's most people like Izzy that you'll see tonight who plays. He's the same as me, and he's a very 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 high level musician. He can't read music either. If someone says play a B, I'm like, what now? They have to show me the chord on the guitar or sing it to me, and then I'll be like, oh, cool, got you. So, yeah, so the only time I would actually collaborate is when I'm getting a live band together. So, or I mean, I really mean there's been like maybe 5 occasions in my whole career where I've had another musician come in the studio. That's how little. I mean, it really is not necessary. So, like when I had a saxophonist come in on, when I had a saxophonist, it's not necessary. When I had a saxophonist come in on Let Me Down Gently, I was literally like, and I kept singing it to him until he got it exactly how I had it in my head. And then there's a bit that he riffed off and went on a mad fucking solo that no one could ever sing to anyone. And I was like, that's fucking amazing. And we tacked that on the end, obviously, because he kind of riffed and I was inspired by what he did. And I was like, please, can you just do your own thing at the end? And we ended up using it. But yeah, pretty much I'm like, no, I didn't sing that. I sang this. So yeah, it's there's not that much collaboration going on, really, mainly because I know exactly what I want, and it's more frustrating to communicate to someone else than just do it myself.
We have time for one more question. Can we do two?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, we'll do the one here in the hat, and then you, and then we'll call it.
I've noticed that your personal style changes a little bit with each album. So I was wondering if your style changes because of the album.
What's the chicken or the egg? Yeah. That's a really good question, actually. It's kind of both, but it's often actually that my personal style starts to change, and then I realize that I'm starting to become more comfortable with a different world and side of myself. And then I'm like in the pandemic, like I had never worn a tracksuit before in my life, right? You guys have seen my style on my first record. It's like no fucking tracksuits, fuck you. I wouldn't have dreamt of it. I never wore practical clothing. It was all the most impractical clothing you could possibly wear. I remember like wearing shoes like this on a walk with my parents, and they were like, "You need to sort your shit out." And I like then the pandemic happened, and it was like everyone got closed indoors, and it was suddenly like it was kind of cool to wear a tracksuit. And I was like, I don't care anymore. I think there's like something that happens as you get older where you're kind of like, I've always loved trying new things. I get bored with things really fast. So I feel like once I've done something, once I feel like I've conquered something, even if someone else doesn't, once I feel like I've conquered something, I feel like, well, I'm done with this, you know? I want to move on. I want to do something different. A bit like, when you get bored of partying when you're 25 or whatever, it's like you're just kind of like, yeah, I did that. I know what it's like and I don't need to do it again. And I think, but I also think they totally influence each other. So as I started to make the references come to life on this record, I was like, I need to work out how I am inside this, because like there are certain things about you that either fit or don't fit with the music, or the music does and doesn't fit with what you are, and they kind of evolve exactly together. So as I developed this album, as I was making the record, the style of the record and the style of me grew together, and it was like symbiotic in a way. It's odd how it happens though. It's quite strange. Like in Trouble in Paradise, I remember it happening, and it just sort of suddenly I was like wearing suits, and I was like, okay, that happened. I don't, but it just works. You can't wear the wrong clothes for the music, and vice versa.
Real quick, one more question here.
Hey, thank you. Good question. Thank you. I think I'm excited about just enjoying it. I think I don't know if I've ever, like I said before, I don't know if I've ever properly enjoyed something that actually a lot of other people dream of, that I dreamed of for a long time. Just feeling comfortable enough in myself to actually be like, yeah, this is what you set up. This is what you spent years working on. So just enjoy it, and if other people love it the way that you've loved making the music, then amazing. And if they don't and it doesn't work, then fuck it, I'll go and do something else, or I'll make music in private and I'll figure it out. Or I've got really into mixing as well over the last 2 records. Mixing is a process that I won't go into now, but maybe some of you understand it, maybe some of you don't. But it's just the very end of a record before you master the record, and it's something I've got really into, and that could be a thing that I do, but it's not something that I stress about anymore. I'm not stressed or competitive with myself in terms of, if this doesn't work, then I'll be this and I won't be seen as this and it won't be that. I'm not really worried about it anymore. And I think just being able to just enjoy it and let the music speak for itself and let me speak for myself. And also, I think I'm more myself than I've ever been. And I think that's got to surely work better and feel better than, kind of not feeling like yourself and doing something like this. You make music for people to relate to you and for them to feel connected to something, and they either will or they won't. And I'm just not stressed about it anymore. So I'm just looking forward to just being relaxed about it and enjoying it, I think.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing you perform.
Thank you.
So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for your awesome questions. We're going to take just a quick pause to set up.
I need to put my in-ears in.
Watch you do your thing.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.